Hey there everyone, That Sexy Nerd is back again, and we're here with new Rockstars' next Harry Potter video, The Chamber of Secrets. And for me, this is probably my third favorite Harry Potter movie. I've always loved this movie. I always enjoyed it. I loved the first one, but this is where I really got into the series. And it even looked like that, like my mother, I remember it was like one of the first times I saw my mother, I was like, yeah, that movie was really good. And it was a kid's movie. You know, all the adults are like, yeah, these kids' movies are not supposed to be that good. But she's like, yeah, that was really good. So, yeah, and I always remembered it for that. That's one of the reasons. I also just, I love everything about this movie. I love snakes. I really do. I know people are going to be like, why do you like snakes? I love snakes. And I love that there's like just a whole hidden snake thing throughout the entire Harry Potter series. Even though it is the House of Slytherin, which is basically the Nazi party, but whatever. The Nazi class, or, you know, the MAGA class, so whatever. But anyway, even still, like, not all snakes are evil, obviously. And, you know, I mean, even Harry has a little... He can speak to snakes, and it's actually really well explained in this movie. And I feel like there were retcons throughout this entire series, like Harry Potter, that Rowling kept making really weird decisions throughout everything. Kind of explains why she's the way she is now. But, you know, I mean... It's this was one of the few retcons that actually really made sense, and I don't even know if you could really call it a retcon. It's technically always been the information, but yeah, you specifically hear him speaking snake, and you didn't hear him speaking snake in the first book. So again, boo on you, Rowling, but you know, she wanted to make that a surprise, I'm sure. So. Other than that, like, again, I really love this movie. Again, it's my third. I will be revealing the next two because the other movies kind of flip-flop for me. I kind of have trouble figuring out their place in my list. So, but I will let you know of my definite favorites over these few videos. So, without further ado, let's get into it. And remember, please smash that like button if you want to see more sexy and nerdy content, and subscribe if you think I deserve it. And remember, sign up for my Patreon for all my latest reactions to all my latest videos. And let's do this thing, y'all. Also, you might notice that my mic is finally working. It turns out it was actually the most simplistic of issues that I had to fix. Still had to adjust the microphone, but... You know, now hopefully everything is fixed and we can continue with these videos unabated. So thanks for sticking with me through some of these videos. I hope some of you can come back. And let's get to it, y'all.
Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Eric Voss, and this is a breakdown of 2002's Harry Potter in the Chamber of Secrets, the second entry in our weekly Harry Potter rewatch series.
I'm sorry, too. I cannot believe I forgot to mention the biggest thing. Yeah, it made Voldemort, this movie made Voldemort a more interesting character. Because, at least, let's be honest, in the first Harry Potter movie, he didn't leave that much of an impression. Like, he just seemed like one cliche villain. We didn't know anything about him. But we showed that not only was he a model student and, you know, basically... it seemed different to everyone, but was actually a lot like Harry in many ways. And even before, they were connected with each other. So it really made the character of Voldemort, for me, feel more interesting and everything. And really just brought got his revitalization and Goblet of Fire. It just made it that much more epic.
At New Rockstars. Throughout the holiday season, we are revisiting all 8 films of this series for Easter eggs, details you never spotted, connections to the book, and just some interesting behind-the-scenes facts that make this film series so timeless, as well as just a general re-examination of how it feels to look back at these films decades later to just reassess their complex cultural impact and to celebrate the artistry of the film, cast, and crew, and how these choices impact the evolution of the book series. Specifically, in this breakdown, we're going to talk about the power of choice.
And in the coming week over on our Break Room channel, be sure to tune into our live Q&A with myself and Gina and a special guest as we take your questions and go behind the breakdown for Chamber of Secrets.
Chamber of Secrets starts with a special Warner Brothers logo floating through the clouds, much like the flying car will be in a moment. This Warner Brothers is a shinier gold than the regular logo to match the Chamber of Secrets title card. And as in the first film, the normal Warner Brothers theme is replaced by the John Williams Harry Potter theme.
Yeah. Yeah. This is, again, I forgot that this movie is also the very first time the Harry Potter movie begins with the John Williams theme. Not all of them do it, but yeah. Or, it's always some remix of it or some orchestrational version of it, but this is the one that really did it well.
From here on out, all of the films will have a uniquely stylized Warner Brothers logo. The camera glides through the clouds to show the endless suburban sprawl, a huge horizontal contrast to the vertically oriented Hogwarts that will end this film in its final shot. In the book, Harry's life here in the summer is so dull that he almost wonders if his wizarding life was all a dream. And I love how right away in this opening shot of Harry, we see 2 black socks hanging from his drawer as this second-year Hogwarts student is laying out his school uniform for the upcoming academic term, but one of these socks will be the one that he gives up and hides in the diary to trick Lucius Malfoy into giving Dobby clothes, freeing that house elf. It's just great foreshadowing in the opening image here. Harry sits flipping through the photo album that Hagrid gave him at the end of the last film. At that time, Harry told Ron and Hermione that leaving school didn't mean he was going home, since he considered Hogwarts to be his new home. It's also why later, when they're flying to Hogwarts, Ron tells Harry, "Welcome home." Now, filming for Chamber of Secrets actually started the Monday after Sorcerer's Stone / Philosopher's Stone came out in theaters.
Really?
So the young cast really had no time to adjust to the newfound fame before being back in it. The Harry Potter franchise is almost anomalistic when it comes to its young actors growing up mostly well-adjusted, professional contributors to the arts, largely avoiding major career scandals, I suppose with the exception of Jamie Waylett's arrest in 2011 for writing.
Yeah.
But there are actually a lot of reasons for these kids being all right. The differences between the professional acting standards in the UK versus in the US, and the Legends of Stage role models these kids were in the presence of. Like, these kids didn't aspire to be Hollywood big shots with fast cars and a lot of drugs. They were learning from Shakespearean trained craftsmen with healthy work-life balances. Like, you can even look into the acting styles of the UK versus the US, and British actors are less likely to embrace like fully method Stanislavski approaches and are like, you know what? My job is to be an actor. I hang my character on the coat hook on my way out of the set and then go home to my spouse and kids. They are professionals over there. But I also think that it helped that these kids had to go right back to work before enjoying any of the spoils of fame. And that, I believe, set them on a path of respecting hard work. And I always think about that with the Chamber of Secrets and characters like Gilderoy Lockhart and Harry having to face the downside of being the famous boy who lived. Fame isn't everything. Now, poor Hedwig the owl has been locked in her cage all summer long because Uncle Vernon wanted to prevent Harry from sending letters to his friends or anyone in the wizarding world. But Harry hasn't been receiving any letters from anyone because Dobby, who shows up in a minute, has actually been intercepting them. Uncle Vernon is the director of a drill manufacturing company, and he's trying to sell a whole lot of drills to tonight's dinner guests, the Masons. Hence why he's making Harry hide in his room upstairs in hopes that nothing goes wrong while Harry stays quiet and pretends that he doesn't exist. When Harry goes back to his room, Dobby, the house elf, is waiting for him. Dobby is voiced by Toby Jones. Yes, Arnim Zola himself, and created by the British visual effects house Framestore. On set, Dobby was played by a tennis ball on a stick. In the final 2 films, actress Diane Gibbons stood in on set for Dobby, which kind of shows how Dobby becomes a more expressive, tragic figure as opposed to what is essentially the Jar Jar Binks of this film. Jason Isaacs, who plays Lucius Malfoy, joked that if he knew Dobby was going to upstage him, he would have gone bigger with his performance. Children would visit the set from time to time and ask Isaacs where Dobby was, and he would tell them he was in his trailer because he didn't want to tell them the truth and ruin the magic for them. Now, when this film came out, a fair number of people thought that Dobby looked a lot like Russian President Vladimir Putin. A group of Russian lawyers actually wanted to sue Warner Brothers over the resemblance because Putin was apparently very angry, but the suit was never filed. As Dobby exits Harry's closet, he has one of Harry's white socks on his ear, and he pulls off the sock and gives it a little sniff and then smiles a little bit as he tosses it. This moment is not in the book, but it foreshadows the end when Harry hides his sock in a book and tricks Lucius into giving it to the elf.
But, even without it, why did you smile after you smelled a stinky sock? Gross.
House elves in the book are hugely problematic because they're essentially magical slaves. And while Dobby desperately wants to be free, he's considered kind of an anomaly among the house elf population, most of whom are depicted as being happy to be slaves. Yikes. And it's also revealed later in the books that Hogwarts also has house elves. They're the ones responsible for making all the delicious food that magically appears on the tables of the Great Hall. Dobby has to punish.
Yeah, speaking of which, it's really weird mentality that they like to be slaves, because they're just as powerful as wizards, as Dobby himself has shown. He even knocked Lucius on his ass. So how did this happen? How in God's name did this happen? And that's what I'm saying. A lot of things were problematic about Rowling even before her, showing that she was really a Slytherin. Why are you okay with the slave system in your books? It's not in America, but still, from your country, man.
Himself anytime he comes close to speaking ill of the wizarding family that he serves, who, spoiler alert, turns out to be the Malfoys. Dobby wears an old pillowcase because the only way to free a house elf is to give them actual clothes. Harry's room has some Gryffindor flourishes around it now, including a red and gold tie, a pennant, and a sticker on his closet door with a coat of arms. There's also a drawing of an owl, presumably Hedwig, on the closet door. So growing up, Harry lived in the cupboard under the stairs. He only got to move into this bedroom, which was reserved for Dudley's extra toys, when Uncle Vernon was trying to stop the Hogwarts owls from delivering Harry his letter to the stairs. The first one was addressed.
I always wondered about that room. How the hell? He's like, yeah, we gave him Dudley's second bedroom. How the hell did they get rid of all of his toys?
To Harry in the cupboard under the stairs, and moving him was his aunt and uncle's attempt to make it so that the owls couldn't find him. So his uncle's line about how they've given him all these things out of the goodness of our hearts is a total misrepresentation. I think there's also some residual fear of the half giant who kicked down their door and gave their son a pigtail that they had to surgically remove. Dobby uses a hover charm to lift the pudding cake, and it's interesting that it has these sort of clouds underneath it, as if they are supporting the cake as it floats through the air. This is maybe to differentiate the kind of magic that house elves have, which...
Yeah, right? Okay. Speaking of which, everything with Harry's family could have been easily solved if they just went obliviate. Or at least obliviate the hate they have for him. Why couldn't they do that? Why? Why?
Doesn't require a wand. We've seen Hogwarts students levitate items before, and Wingardium Leviosa never looked quite like this. But distinguishing elf magic is an important function, because in Deathly Hallows, we see how Dobby's magic allows him to save Harry and the others when they are imprisoned at the Malfoy house. Now in the book, right after the pudding cake drops on Mrs. Mason, Harry gets in trouble by the Ministry of Magic, which I guess can't differentiate between who uses the magic at a residence. Underage wizards are not allowed to use magic outside of school, and Harry is the only magic user known to live at the Dursleys' house, so when magic is detected, everyone assumes it's Harry's doing. The book on Harry's bedside table is Witch Owl
by Miranda Goshawk,
author of a lot of in-universe books, including the Standard Book of Spells used by students at Hogwarts. The flying car that Ron and the twins pick up Harry in is a 1959 powder blue Ford Anglia 105E. They used 16 of them for filming, and of those, 14 ended up wrecked because of the later scene with the Whomping Willow. When J.K. Rowling was a teenager, her friend apparently owned a blue Ford Anglia that she said rescued her from her boredom, just like the Weasleys rescue Harry. Ron wishes Harry a happy 12th birthday. This is just in keeping with something absolutely insane and magical happening to Harry on all of his birthdays, like last year when Hagrid busted down the door and told Harry that you're a wizard. The Ford flies them all the way back to the Weasley's house. In the book, this house is called the Burrow, and they just keep magically adding chunks to it, which is why it's so lopsided and misshapen and nothing seems to match or go together. Harry has never been in an all-magic household before, so he takes in all the sights, including a pan that is washing itself, a clock which lists where every Weasley is at any given time. The options that can be seen include garden, school, home, dentist, prison, lost, Quidditch, and mortal peril.
Who's in prison?
Just be Azkaban? Does she really have to worry about her not knowing if her kids have been convicted? And yes, as Harry watches, the hands for Fred, George, and Ron all move from lost to home. If my name was under lost, you could presume that I'm just watching The Constant, season 4 on Netflix over and over again. The fact that dentist is on his family clock is hilarious and weird to me. Do wizards have dentists? If so, why is Arthur Weasley so curious when he's talking to Hermione's parents? I think Arthur Weasley added this because he's just so obsessed with Muggle culture, and he just thinks that like dentist means hanging out with muggles. So Harry gets to see what it would have been like if he'd grown up in a completely magical wizarding family instead of with the Dursleys. Ron envies Harry for his fame, but Harry envies Ron for his just regular family home life in the wizarding world. Fame isn't everything.
They never really went into that. I feel like that should have been a little bit more, you know, contentious with between Harry and Ron. And, you know, not having Ron go like, your parents are dead in that stupid Deathly Hallows Part 1. Like, god damn, that movie is so bad. I mean, I love all the Harry Potter movies, but that and the Half-Blood Prince are so fucking bad.
In the book, Harry's...
I'd like to propose a toast to my family.
Harry spends a bit of time at the Weasleys and does things like interact with their house ghoul, practicing Quidditch, and helping the Weasleys de-gnome their garden. This sequence would have been absolutely hilarious to see, since it pretty much involves swinging the gnomes around and then tossing them as far as possible, like an insane hammer toss event, as these gnomes grunt, "Get off me!" and then trudge in a line in defeat into the brush. Now, this effect of the knitting needles knitting in midair was actually created by having a crew member's mother who knitted while sitting for several hours and working on her actual knitting and then just removing her later in post. Arthur Weasley doesn't notice Harry at first when he gets home, and it's because the Weasleys do not know how to use birth control. They have 7 kids: Bill, Charlie, Percy, the twins Fred and George, Ron, and Ginny. Now, nowadays, people only have that because they're, you know, weirdly religious, but in olden times, people just had that many kids because they assumed some of them would die, as will be the case by the time we get to Deathly Hallows. So sad. Now, Bill Weasley shows up in later films, but interestingly, Charlie Weasley never made it into any of the films other than in a photograph when they were on vacation to Egypt. Both of the 2 older brothers are already out of Hogwarts. Bill, the oldest, works as a curse breaker for Gringotts. Charlie works with dragons in Romania. Errol is the Weasley's extremely old owl. Since Mr. Weasley is essentially a government employee and they have 7 kids, they don't have a lot of money and can't afford a new owl. Ron's extremely sensitive about his family's lack of funds, which comes up many times throughout the series. Poor Errol can barely handle his deliveries anymore. There's a lot of owl injustice in this film. Seriously. They head to Diagon Alley via the Flu Network. Ron wears the sweater with the R on it that his mom knitted for him last Christmas in the first film. Harry mushmouths it.
Diagonally.
Now, diagonally does not sound anything like nocturnally, and I maintain that Harry actually should have shot off at like a 45-degree angle up into the stratosphere. But the flu power, I suppose, takes Harry's intent into account, much like the Sorting Hat. And he just punishes this poor young wizard's dictation by spitting him out somewhere nearby where he wanted to go, like here. Borgin and Burke's shop in Nocturne Alley, the shadier black market version of Diagon Alley. There are a lot of dark arts items on display, including this opal necklace, which will come back in a big way in Half-Blood Prince, when one of these poor Gryffindor Quidditch team chasers just has a really bad day. But this hand that grabs Harry's is the Hand of Glory, and it's used by thieves and plunderers. You put a candle in it, and it grants light only to the holder. In one of the later books, Draco has this and uses it in Hogwarts to do some of Voldemort's bidding. Harry hides in the Vanishing Cabinet, which is another item that plays a huge role in Half-Blood Prince, but this whole sequence was actually deleted from the theatrical release. It's only in the extended version. Draco and his father, Lucius, go into the store and talk to Mr. Borgin. Lucius wants to sell some forbidden items to Borgin because the Ministry, and specifically Arthur Weasley's department, is conducting raids to make sure no wizards have anything illegal, like, you know, some old belongings and relics from Voldemort's time. That's why when Lucius sees Arthur later, Lucius sneers when asking him about these raids. Anytime he is on screen, Lucius is always lit in a way so that only part of his face is illuminated, just in case there was any question of whether or not he was evil. Jason Isaacs wanted Lucius to be as big of a bully as possible so viewers would understand why Draco was such a little worm. He also chose the long hair look to distinguish himself from Draco, and to keep the hair out of his eyes, he always has to tilt his head back, and the effect is that he's always looking down his nose at everyone. Jason Isaacs actually originally auditioned for the role of Gilderoy Lockhart, but Chris Columbus asked if he'd be willing to read for Lucius Malfoy as well. Isaacs didn't really want that role because he considered it too similar to his character of Captain Hook and Peter Pan, who was also an eccentric man with a wig who was very mean to children. He auditioned anyway.
But that came out after this!
And was convincing enough to sign on and ended up really enjoying it. Now, the books the shelf as Hagrid takes Harry out of Nocturne Alley are reportedly Rowling's own copies of the Harry Potter books. Also, I have no idea what it is, but this bright red, life-size wooden boy in the same alley is so weird and terrifying. Like at night, it comes to life and terrorizes evil children. When Hermione sees Harry, she fixes his glasses with Oculus Reparo spell, the same spell that she used the first time they met on the train in the first film. In Flourish and Blots, there is a Magical Me autobiography signing by Gilderoy Lockhart, played incredibly by Kenneth Branagh. And he is just one of our best artists, from a director to a writer to just the roles he's played in Christopher Nolan movies, from directing Thor and giving the MCU a whole corner of that world to play within. I love this man. Hugh Grant was originally cast in the role, and he would have been great.
It would have been better
because conflicts with shooting 2 weeks notice. In the book, this scene is when Lockhart announces he's a new Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher at Hogwarts. The movie saves that reveal for a bit later. Now,
I feel like Hugh Grant is more suited to the role, but it really speaks to Kenneth Branagh's acting that he can really just play that kind of scumbag, you know?
when Lucius Malfoy meets Harry, he did exactly what Draco did in the first film and holds his hand out for a handshake. Harry rejected Draco's handshake, but he accepts Lucius's and is rewarded with a pull-in close power move so that Lucius can get a better look at his scar. This walking stick with a silver snake handle is later revealed to house Lucius's wand. And the silver snake has like 2 fangs that poke down so that when Lucius hits people with it, like his own son, it hurts extra. Lucius brings up Hermione's parents because he's one of those pure blood fanatics who believes only people with full wizarding ancestry should be accepted at Hogwarts to practice magic. Voldemort took it a step further and taught his followers that anyone with non-magical blood should be killed. And Voldemort himself, it's revealed later, is not in fact a pure blood wizard. It's also mentioned several times that if only pure blood wizards and witches existed, they'd all be, inbred to not a good place.
No shit! And not only that, it also speaks to the fact that, just like Hitler, Voldemort, his followers follow a self-hating person killing his own people because technically Hitler was Jewish. And these people are still stupid enough to be like, oh, Hitler, oh. It's pathetic. It's just utterly, utterly, utterly pathetic how lazy and disgusting some people can be.
Hermione looks over at her parents. They're chatting with Mr. Weasley, who again loves and is fascinated by muggles and their world. It's soft, but you can actually hear Mr. Weasley say to them this. This is because Hermione's parents are dentists, and Mr. Weasley has heard people are afraid of dentists, but I guess he lacks the context to understand why people are afraid of dentists. It's just a running bit from the books. Ironically, Lucius also hates Ron, even though the Weasleys are about as pureblood as you can get. But of course, Lucius only likes rich pureblood wizards, which the book points out would be almost no one, since every wizard has a muggle somewhere in their bloodline. Most just lie about it, like Voldemort did. When Lucius picks up Ginny's book and says, Tatty's secondhand book, that's when he slips Tom Riddle's diary in there. You can actually see Lucius pick up one book, and then when he sets it back down in Ginny's cauldron, the diary is tucked behind it.
I never noticed that the first time. That was like the first time I ever saw a movie, and I was like, I never noticed that. This movie was huge in my childhood, it came out at the right time. I believe I was 12. I believe I was the same age as Harry Potter, just a little younger.
Of course, is one of many of Voldemort's belongings that Lucius Malfoy had in his collection, which is why Arthur's department was raiding his home. So he's kind of deceptively offloading some of these things, specifically in the cauldron of the daughter of the guy who's raiding him. Lucius was one of Voldemort's followers, but he avoided prosecution by using his considerable wealth to grease the wheels, and also claimed afterwards that he'd been bewitched by Voldemort and not in his right mind. Obviously, that's a lie. In the book, when Lucius is insulting the kids, Mr. Weasley actually throws himself at him, and Hagrid has to break up the fight, with both men getting some licks in. I would have loved to see these 2 actors really throw down. The Weasleys park their car at King's Cross Station in a spot with a sign that reads, no parking, taxis only. Obviously, they have no idea how muggle cars and signs and parking work. In the book, Mr. Weasley enchanted the car to be much bigger on the inside, but doesn't tell Mrs. Weasley, who marvels over how muggles manage to design things so well without magic, so neither of them really have much experience with them. The station guard at King's Cross is the same one from the first film. He's played by Harry Taylor. He acts occasionally, but is also Helena Bonham Carter's driver on a lot of films that she appears in, including including Half-Blood Prince and Deathly Hallows. Harry and Ron decide that since they can't get
Driver?
through the barrier, thanks to Dobby, they'll fly the car to Hogwarts. They get seen by a few muggles and almost get flattened by the Hogwarts Express, and Harry nearly falls to his death, but John Williams' score for all of this is absolutely stunning. It adds to the amusement park ride feeling of the whole sequence and just puts you right into the action. They crash into the Whomping Willow, which beats the hell out of them and the car. And poor Hedwig, this owl has been locked in a cage for months and then crashed into a solid barrier back at the train station, and now almost gets killed by a tree. All because Harry is a dope, and Dobby. Now, in a lot of these shots, you can see some of the rushed production here. Like there's part of the glass in the car is just broken on the wrong side and all the chaos. It's because they just jumped right back into shooting this movie. And in all the chaos, Ron's wand breaks, and they'll spend the rest of the movie with it not working too well. The Whomping Willow reappears throughout the series, and we will see play a very big role in Prisoner of Azkaban. Their fed up Ford ejects them and their luggage with a slapstick fart noise. Ron makes sure that Scabbers is okay, and again, a reminder that this rat will turn out to be an adult man who's been living with Ron for years and is now locked in a cage. Filch, who isn't a big fan of students, takes great joy in telling Ron and Harry, "Oh dear, we are in trouble." Snape
Fuck you, Filch!
informs them that they were seen by at least 7 muggles, and the newspaper headline reads, "Flying Forward Anglia mystifies muggles." There's also an article about the Lockhart book signing. I love that there's still a headline about Lockhart's book signing there, and he was right that his photo with Harry would land him on the front page. Snape mentions that they did damage to the Whomping Willow that's been on the ground since before you were born. Now, the story of how and why and when this tree was planted is explored in the next film. It really guards the entrance to the Shrieking Shack in Hogsmeade, which is where Remus Lupin would go to turn into a werewolf on full moons.
Yeah, why is everything Alan Rickman says in these movies like a fucking meme? Everything is that comes out of that man's mouth. You just love to imitate him. It's funny.
Dumbledore didn't want anyone accidentally stumbling upon him when he was in that state. I am bad at sleep. Click the link from the third, which Albus Dumbledore, the best sleep of your life. Sweet dreams. Now, this is the last film in which Albus Dumbledore is played by Richard Harris, who sadly passed away right before this film's release. From the third film on, he will be played by Michael Gambon. Daniel Radcliffe said that Harris's passing was his first encounter with death, and this movie is dedicated to Harris's memory. Harry finds a letter for Filch in Quick Spell, a correspondence course in beginner magic. This is a scene deleted from the theatrical release, and it deals with the subplot from the book about Filch being a squib, a person born to wizarding families who has no ability to do magic. This is a great source of shame and embarrassment for Filch, and one of the reasons he has such contempt for these young wizards who go to the school. Filch later thinks that Harry attacked Mrs. Norris because Harry would be after wizards who would have muggle blood or are inferior in some way. Mandrakes are introduced in this film so that they can pay off later as a cure for the students who are petrified by the basilisk. Their screams are created using a combination of a 1-month-old baby's cries and the screams of adult women, and the fact that they were mixed. What a horrifying sound.
And I understand.
Chris Columbus's daughter Eleanor returns, but still in a non-speaking role since J.K. Rowling didn't want non-UK actors to speak in the films for authenticity reasons. Originally, Columbus had planned to direct all of the movies, but after working on the first 2 back-to-back, he realized that schedule would take him away from his family for a long time, and he passes the torch to Alfonso Cuarón after this one. Nearly Headless Nick grants Percy Weasley and Miss Clearwater, referring to
Can I offer you a popped Quaker rice cake?
Sure.
They go great with cream cheese, avocado,
Peanuts anymore, lady.
to Penelope Clearwater. Their relationship and Percy trying to hide it from his brothers was a subplot from the book that's mostly left out of the movies. But basically, there's a big secret about Percy that Jenny had discovered, and it's revealed in the final scene of the book. It was that Percy and Penelope Clearwater were dating. Ron tries to fix his broken wand with Spellotape. Then we meet this little guy.
Hi, Harry.
Yeah.
I'm Colin Creevy. I'm in Gryffindor too.
Colin Creevy, who mentions that his dad is a muggle, is a huge fanboy of Harry Potter and follows him around taking photos, which both annoys Harry, who's trying to avoid looking like a fame seeker, and ends up being one of the reasons students think Harry is the one attacking people when Colin turns up petrified later. Now, Ron is now wearing second-year robes, which in this film are noticeably more faded and worn down compared to everyone else's robes, and that's because they'd probably be hand-me-downs from Fred and George, who, due to their goofing around with like firecrackers, probably scuffed up these robes something good. Errol shows shows up with a howler for Ron. That's a letter that screams at the recipient in the sender's voice. Now, if you don't open it quickly, it gets louder and louder until eventually the letter explodes open and screams at top volume. They're super embarrassing to get, and I can't imagine being in grade school getting one of these from your parents for everyone to hear. We find out later in the series that Voldemort put a curse on the Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher position at Hogwarts so that no one would last more than a year. Last year it was Professor Quirrell, and this year it is Gilderoy Lockhart. Lockhart is an inept wizard who actually stole the stories of glory from other wizards and witches and then erased their memories using Obliviate. Other than being an insufferable egomaniac, Lockhart being unable to contain the Cornish pixies he released is the first hint that he's actually a fraud. Chris Columbus used the creatures from Gremlins, which he wrote the screenplay for, as an inspiration for the pixie design. The Slytherin Quidditch team is now accurate to the book in that all players are male. Malfoy is their newest seeker after his dad bought everyone on the team brand new Nimbus 2001 brooms. Malfoy calls Hermione Mudblood, the Wizarding World's version of a racial slur meaning someone with dirty blood because their line is mixed with muggles, or they just have muggle parents in Hermione's case. Ron's spell backfires so that he ends up barfing up slugs. Apparently, in movie theaters during the scene, children actually start throwing up from a combination of the grossness of the fake slugs and just, I suppose, eating too much movie theater candy. But it could have been worse. In the books, Ron is barfing up dozens of tiny slugs every time he burps, which somehow seems more disgusting than just, one big one. Rupert Grint actually said that this fake slug tasted pretty good because it was coated with sweet candy slime. Harry hears the voice of the basilisk for the first time and finds Mrs. Norris the cat petrified, along with writing on the wall that reads, "The Chamber of Secrets has been opened. Enemies of the air beware." The basilisk was actually voiced by Jason Isaacs. He's an accomplished voiceover actor. And one day he was doing ADR for Lucius Malfoy, and he was messing around in the booth with different voices, and Chris Columbus asked him to put this skill to use for the film to voice the giant snake. Minerva McGonagall explains the lore behind the Chamber of Secrets, that soon after Hogwarts was founded by Godric Gryffindor, Helga Hufflepuff, Rowena Ravenclaw, and Salazar Slytherin, the elitist prick of the bunch, decided they should only teach magic to purebloods. The others disagreed, so Slytherin left the school, but legend says he left behind a hidden chamber. Only when his heir returned to the school could the chamber be opened to release the monster within and purge the school of wizards without pure blood. Now, in the book, it's actually the history of magic teacher Professor Binns, a ghost, who explains all of this. This ghost is so boring that he didn't even notice when he died. He just kept right on lecturing. He does not appear in the movies, but it is a very fun scene where they're like, for once, interested in something this teacher has to lecture about, and he's very confused why they're so interested in it. Now, to figure out how to make Polyjuice Potion, Hermione uses the book Most Potent Potions, a book with hundreds of advanced potions, some of which are described as having effects almost too gruesome to think about. In the book, Hermione, Harry, and Ron have to steal some ingredients from Snape's private stores, something he brings up later in Goblet of Fire, when those same ingredients go missing again. Hermione also claims to have stolen the hair of a Slytherin student named Millicent Bulstrode when they're like in a scuffle, when a big fight erupts between kids in the houses. Now, we see a Quidditch match in this movie. Slytherin's new brooms give them the edge in this fight, putting them up 90 to Gryffindor's 30, but when Harry and Draco are both chasing the Golden Snitch, Harry manages to keep pace with Draco and even overtakes him, which is impressive considering Draco's broom, the Nimbus 2001, is supposed to be much faster than the Nimbus 2000 that Harry rides. Hagrid sees that someone bewitched a bludger to follow Harry, and he says that Harry's got himself a rogue bludger, and a rogue bludger was actually this chapter's title in the book. Gilderoy Lockhart tries to repair Harry's broken arm by just magicking away any bone at all, and I love the bendy wrist effect that was practical. Adam Pomfrey gives Harry Skelligro. On the bottle it says 1100 drops, a remedy for bone growth. Skelligro, bonafide results every time, sold only by Rubens, Winnicus and Company Incorporated. That night, Colin Creevey is the first human to be attacked. Full-size models of the actors were used for all the people who get petrified, and they look pretty good. Like, definitely kind of creepy, uncanny valley, which is exactly how you'd expect a petrified child to look. Hermione brews the Polyjuice Potion in the girls' bathroom that no one uses, and we meet another pesky new character of this film, Moaning Myrtle. She's played by Shirley Henderson, who, despite playing a student, was 37 at the time of filming, which becomes pretty weird in Goblet of Fire, where she's watching Harry bathe and mentions having watched Cedric bathe. But, since Myrtle is a ghost and she can't age throughout the films like the others do, they had to go with just a young-looking adult actor who wouldn't age. As a kid, definitely would have aged film to film. Snape
still makes her a pedophile. He tried to, move past it, but she's still a pedophile.
and Lockhart teaches students to duel. John Williams composed this more dramatic form of Lockhart's theme for the dueling. It was influenced by an old-fashioned tango to emphasize the character's slightly exaggerated and inflated posture. The duel itself has greetings and stances based on fencing, just with wands in place of the foils. The raised stage that they fight on shows the phases of the moon. Before the duel starts, Justin Finch Fletchley introduces himself to Harry and mentions that he's Muggle-born. This is a kid who will later think that Harry bewitched a snake to attack him. Snape uses the Expelliarmus spell against Lockhart. That is a spell that Harry himself favors so much that he will eventually use it against Voldemort and become known for it among Voldemort's followers.
Come on, you knew how to say it. You have to say it like Expelliarmus. You gotta put more emphasis on everything for some reason. Expelliarmus.
Lockhart doesn't even seem to try to get a spell out against Snape or to block the spell, just more evidence of how completely useless this wizard is. Next, Malfoy conjures a snake, and Harry speaks to the snake in Parseltongue.
Oh, I love this
Now, in the first film, Harry also spoke to the snake at the zoo, but we heard that from Harry's perspective, which means it sounded to the audience like English. Harry, at this point, doesn't even know he's a Parselmouth who speaks Parseltongue, and no one else present can understand him, so they assume he's telling it to attack Justin, when in fact, he's telling the snake to leave Justin alone. Harry has this extremely rare ability because when Voldemort, who is also a Parselmouth, attacked him, he transferred some of his self to Harry. Salazar Slytherin also had the ability to talk to snakes, so naturally, this display does nothing to allay the fears that Harry is the heir of Slytherin. Cambridge linguistics professor Francis Nolan was hired to develop the Parseltongue language, and he did such a thorough and exhaustive job that J.K. Rowling put together a guide that taught actors how to speak it properly. Now, Justin, who had just told Harry that he's Muggle-born, assumes Harry told the snake to attack him, and this leads students to assume that Harry is the heir of Slytherin. In the book, this actually leads to a whole subplot of various Hufflepuffs, like Ernie Macmillan, turning on Harry, which does briefly subside after Hermione's petrified, but kind of returns when Harry is a rivalry to Hufflepuff's Golden Boys, Cedric Diggory, and Goblet of Fire. I really like this inner house conflict. While Gryffindor always has its eyes on Slytherin, Hufflepuff views Gryffindor as like fame and glory hogs. It's an interesting conflict for Harry too, that despite you only trying to do right by some people, they will always view you as the villain and find reasons to unfairly slander your struggles as privileged narcissism. There's a running theme throughout the books that despite the fact that Harry is seen as the boy who lived and saved wizard kind from Voldemort, everyone is also very quick to believe the worst of him. Fame isn't everything. It comes back again and again in the books and the films, and it's a good metaphor for the parasocial relationships between non-famous people and celebrities. Some people worship Harry despite not knowing him, and others want to see him torn down. Some students talk crap about Harry and even says Voldemort probably attacked Harry because he didn't want the competition from another dark wizard, which is hilarious since Harry was a baby when that happened. In a scene deleted from the theatrical release, Harry runs into Hagrid holding a dead rooster in the hallway. In the book, Hagrid eventually finds all the Hogwarts roosters dead, another clue as to what sort of creature is in the Chamber of Secrets, since the crow of a rooster is deadly to a basilisk. When Voldemort possessed Ginny, he forced her to kill all the roosters. Harry finds both Nearly Headless Nick and Justin petrified in the hallway, and this dude can't catch a break. Filch finds him in that moment, and since that whole snake incident just happened, of course, everyone assumes it's Harry doing this again. Now in the book, Nearly Headless Nick is given a bit more of a subplot with his denial of entry to the Headless Hunt, an organization of headless ghosts that he's unable to join because he's only nearly headless, which is just another example of the theme of only outcasts and others being attacked. We head into Dumbledore's office, to which the password of entry is Sherbet Lemon. Since Dumbledore loves sweets and is constantly talking about them, actually in Half-Blood Prince, Dumbledore has a bowl of sherbet lemons on his desk. Dumbledore's office is filled with interesting artifacts and oddities that we revisit throughout the films, but in this office, Harry questions the Sorting Hat. The book shows that there are a ton of parallels between Harry and Voldemort / Tom Riddle, right down to even how they look. Back when Tom was still in school at least, Harry here is worried that he might be the heir of Slytherin, and he's remembering when the Sorting Hat almost placed him in the Slytherin house. The one important distinction though is that Harry desperately didn't want to be in that house because unlike Voldemort, he has a good heart. Harry sees Fawkes the Phoenix burst into flames and be reborn. Fawkes comes back later and is actually the Phoenix whose feathers make up the core of both Harry and Voldemort's wands. Harry doesn't find this out until later in the series, and it becomes a very big plot point why their wands are unable to destroy each other. Fawkes itself is yet another animatronic practical effect. It was so detailed and realistic, Richard Harris thought it was a real live trained bird. Apparently when Columbus told him it was just a robot, Harris shouted, "Fuck off!" because he was so shocked. Dumbledore says,
"Fascinating creatures, phoenixes. They can carry immensely heavy loads, no doubt. No tears, healing powers?
Yes, setting up what happens in the Chamber of Secrets when Fawkes heals Harry and carries everyone out to safety. We also get this exchange between Dumbledore and Harry.
But I must ask you, is there something you wish to tell me?
No, sir.
Nothing.
Nothing.
It's actually the exact same words exchanged between Dumbledore and Tom Riddle.
Is there something you wish to tell me?
No, sir. Nothing.
Again, another intentional way of showing the similarities between Harry and Riddle. Harry stays at Hogwarts over the holidays again, as he did in the first film. Obviously, he doesn't want to go back to the Dursleys, and they don't want him there either. And since fewer people are in the school, this is when they choose to use the Polyjuice. To make sure the real Crabbe and Goyle don't get in their way during the Polyjuice potion plan, they gotta put him out of commission for a bit. Hermione hands Ron and Harry cupcakes filled with a sleeping draft, and Harry lifts them in the air using the Wingardium Leviosa spell, which we saw them learn in the first film, and which, of course, Ron used against a troll to knock it out with its own club. When Ron and Harry transform into Crabbe and Goyle after drinking the Polyjuice potion, they still have their old voices.
We still sound like ourselves. You need to sound more like Crabbe.
Now, this is not how Polyjuice Potion works in the book, where it also changes your voice. And it leaves a pretty big plot hole, since in later films, other people use Polyjuice Potion and don't keep their old voices, like Barty Crouch Jr. I can only assume that the filmmakers for this one didn't want to confuse little kids about who was who, and this was their fix, and didn't really think ahead for the series. The furniture, decor, and the lighting of the Slytherin common room is different from Gryffindor's. It looks far less warm and inviting. They are in the dungeons. There's a lot of stone. The furniture is all black leather. It's the whole vibe. After Harry, as Goyle, takes off his glasses and says he was reading, Malfoy responds,
Reading? I didn't know you could read.
This is apparently an improvised line from Tom Felton because he kind of blanked on what his actual line was, and the filmmakers ended up liking it and leaving it in. Now, in a scene that was deleted from the theatrical release only in the extended edition, Harry, Ron, and Hermione examine the diary of Tom Marvolo Riddle, and Ron, having polished all the trophies in the trophy room as part of his detention, remembers seeing that name on a trophy for special services to the school. We actually saw part of that trophy minus the name in the first film in the trophy case, so it's just a cool Easter egg that came back. In the diary flashback, Tom Riddle wears a prefect badge since he was, by all accounts, an exemplary student who all the teachers loved except Dumbledore, who never fully trusted him. It's revealed later that the dead person they are carting out is Moaning Myrtle, who J.K. Rowling confirmed was in the Ravenclaw house. Dumbledore was still just a professor at the time, working under the Hogwarts headmaster Armando Dippet. Harry recognizes the look of panic in Riddle's eyes at the idea of Hogwarts shutting down, because it's a panic he too feels at the prospect of having to go back to the Dursleys. It's one of several reasons why Harry trusts Riddle initially. Young Hagrid is played by Robbie Coltrane's tall body double in all the films, Martin Bayfield. His voice was dubbed by Coltrane, though. We get the backstory of why Hagrid was expelled. Riddle convinced everyone it was Hagrid's pet giant spider that killed Myrtle, Aragog. Again, Dumbledore never fully believed the story, which is why he let Hagrid stay on as groundskeeper, but his wand was snapped in two. He kept the pieces inside his pink umbrella and uses it to do magic still from time to time, despite the fact that he's not supposed to. Harry is real quick to believe the worst of his friend Hagrid, especially after Hagrid just went to bat for him with Dumbledore. But again, he sees a lot of himself in Tom Riddle and is being manipulated by one of the best. Still, Ron has good instincts about it.
We don't even know this Tom Riddle. He sounds like a dirty, rotten snitch to me.
Hermione, ever the logical one, says that Hagrid's their friend and they should just ask him about it, but only after she gets petrified do the boys decide to take her advice. The person who ransacks Harry's stuff looking for the diary turns out to be Ginny Weasley. She thought it was just an ordinary diary, so she started out writing stuff in there about Harry and her crush on him. When Riddle started communicating with her via the diary, she wrote even more stuff, so she's terrified of Harry figuring out how the diary works and learning about her crush and all the stuff she's been confessing. We meet Cornelius Fudge, the Minister of Magic, who's always asking Dumbledore for his advice and expertise on various topics. He's there to take Hagrid to Azkaban, the magical prison in the middle of the sea, guarded by Dementors, the dark creatures who feed on happiness and can suck the soul right out of a person's body. Given that Azkaban is supposed to be one of the most horrible places on Earth, gotta say Hagrid is pretty chill about it. Lucius Malfoy shows up as one of the governors of the school to tell Dumbledore he's been suspended as headmaster, and Dumbledore...
What exactly does Hagrid have to worry about? He's 2 feet taller than most of the people there. They'd probably worship him as a god, and nobody can use magic there, so he has to rely on his own strength. He'd own the prison.
Or shows he clearly knows that Harry and Ron are right there underneath the invisibility cloak.
You will find that help will always be given at Hogwarts to those who ask for it.
That look creeps me out every time I watch the
Why?
scene. Hagrid, much less subtly, signals to the boys that they should follow the spiders that they've seen skittering away from the castle. A bit of advice that almost gets them killed by Aragog's offspring in the Dark Forest. Aragog is a very cool practical effect. They built a massive mechanical spider that took more than 15 people to operate. The hairs on his face and body were each individually hand inserted and were a mixture of different materials, including coconut fibers and broom bristles. The animatronic had a leg span of over 18 feet. Now, Rupert Grint, like Ron, actually is afraid of spiders in real life and claims he wasn't doing much acting during these scenes because he's legitimately freaked out by the robot spider. He has a hard time even watching that scene in the film. Ron tries to warn Harry about the spiders.
Harry? What?
This is an homage to a similar moment in Chris Columbus's Home Alone 2.
Oh, pigeons.
Harry, shut up. I want to enjoy this.
Ron asks
Really
Harry if he
didn't know
knows
that.
any spells that can help them, and Harry says one. He uses the Aranya Exume spell that he only knew because he saw Tom Riddle use it against Aragog earlier in the diary flashback. The spell manages to take out only a few of the spiders, and Harry and Ron are rescued by the battered Ford Anglia at the last second. The fact that this Ford just becomes wild and feral and lives in the forest is like one of my favorite loose threads in these
funny.
books. They realize that Hermione
Totally
has
insane.
figured it all out, that it is a basilisk in the Chamber of Secrets. Harry could hear it and understand it because it is a type of snake. Spiders flee before it. It can live for hundreds of years. It's been getting around through the pipes, and its gaze turns people into stone. Harry figures out the rest, that everyone was only petrified and not killed because of special circumstances. Mrs. Norris, the cat, saw the basilisk in the reflection of the water on the ground. Colin Creevey saw it through his camera lens. Justin Finch Fletchley saw it through nearly headless Nick the ghost. Hermione saw its reflection in the mirror. Harry also realizes that the victim 50 years ago was Moaning Myrtle. Ginny gets taken into the chamber by the monster, and Snape and the other teachers call out Lockhart, who's been bragging about how he knows exactly where the entrance is. Harry and Ron catch him as he's trying to flee Hogwarts like a thief in the night. He's packing up all of his stuff, including a wig that he has on his desk. I also like the detail that some of the portraits of himself have also just fled the frames. Lockhart reveals that he never really did all the stuff he claimed in his books. He stole other wizard stories of heroism and then wiped their memories using the Obliviate memory charm. He later tries this on Harry with Ron's broken wand, which was what causes it to backfire. Harry uses his parcel tongue to open the entrance to the Chamber of Secrets, which is in Myrtle's bathroom. Now, there aren't any subtitles here, but according to the book, the words he says are just open up. They slide down the pipes where there are bones of animals that the basilisk has been feeding off for years scattered about, along with a giant snake skin. Lockhart steals Ron's crappy wand, but the Obliviate spell rebounds, causing a cave-in and a total loss of Lockhart's memories. Harry gets separated from Ron and Lockhart, and just like at the climax of the previous film, he has to proceed by himself. Inside the chamber, the stone face of Salazar Slytherin is flanked by rows of stone snakes. Tom Riddle, in the mostly flesh, reveals that he's been manipulating Ginny and that he's actually Voldemort.
Voldemort is my past, present, and future.
Okay, the anagramming here is a little silly, but I will admit, watching this as a kid, my mind was blown. But the fact that he worked in I am Lord and the anagram is just, kind of dumb. In the book, Voldemort explains that the more Ginny poured her thoughts and feelings into the journal, the more he fed on them, draining her life force to feed his own and eventually becoming corporeal. It's interesting to think about a younger J.K. Rowling drafting the idea of the most powerful thing being a lonely girl left alone with a book full of empty pages to pour her feelings into. Especially now that for this author, her empty pages have turned into like a blinking cursor in an empty field of a tweet draft, beckoning her to share all of her dark thoughts with the world, and that she could just stop that pain if she could just stop writing for a second. Harry shows loyalty to Dumbledore, causing Fawkes to fly in with help, the Sorting Hat, from which Harry is able to retrieve the Sword of Gryffindor. A maneuver that Dumbledore later muses is a magician's maneuver, right? Pulling something from out of a hat. Tom Riddle summons the basilisk, which, like Aragog, was partially practical. A 25-foot-long animatronic was built, and the finished scene was a mix of digital effects as a basilisk chases Harry. The basilisk drops out of the mouth of the Slytherin statue and then chases Harry over the wet pathway. Harry trips and drops his glasses, which don't break this time. Fawkes swoops in and claws the basilisk's eyes out, neutralizing the threat of it petrifying Harry. Harry watches this go down via the beast's shadows on the wall, a cool effect that makes it all the more realistic. In the book, the Phoenix's cry also has the effect of calming and bolstering Harry, but the wounded basilisk thrashes around and only stops when it locates Harry through hearing him. It chases Harry through the tunnels, and Harry, like the rats he sees running at his feet, is trapped. The close-up of the animatronic head with the dripping teeth protruding is just very cool and appropriately scary, and I love the camera work where, Harry looks looks at the bars, and then whip pan, oh, the steak is right there. Harry does the old throw a rock so it thinks you're over there trick, and the basilisk slithers away. Harry goes back to the chamber where Ginny is almost dead, and the basilisk bursts out of the water like freaking Jaws. Harry grabs the sword and climbs up to the statue to gain the high ground, and in the final moment of the battle, Harry grabs the sword right as it's about to slide off and plunges it up through the basilisk's open mouth as he moves to strike. The basilisk gives a few thrashes before falling over, dead. The chaotic and exciting fight score gives way to a mix of Harry's theme as he walks wounded by a venomous fang. With his strength failing him, Harry uses the fang to stab the diary, which bleeds ink forth from its pages. It looks so cool, and I love he does one side of the page, the other side of the page, closes it hamburger style, and skewers the whole damn thing. Riddle is destroyed, and Ginny is restored to health. In later films, it's revealed that this diary is one of the Horcruxes that had actually contained a part of Voldemort's soul. And it is also a very big deal that basilisk venom is one of the things that can destroy a Horcrux, and that Gryffindor's sword had grazed some of that venom, absorbing that venom to make itself stronger. Fox's tears heal Harry's wound, like the water from the Holy Grail in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. John Williams' score even sounds similar to that moment in Last Crusade. Fox flies everyone out of the chamber to safety. Dumbledore gives Harry and Ron special awards for services to the school, which is now one more thing that Harry has in common with Tom Riddle / Voldemort. And again, like the end of the first film, Dumbledore fills Harry in with some of the exposition and sets Harry's mind at ease about the similarities he sees between himself and Riddle and which house he truly belongs. We'll come back to that quote in a moment though. Lucius Malfoy shows up with Dobby in tow, and Harry puts two and two together. Lucius is pissed that he was foiled by this kid.
Let us hope that Mr. Potter will always be around to save the day.
Don't worry.
I will be.
I will be.
Apparently, this exchange was improvised. Nothing was scripted here, but Jason Isaacs felt that his character would say something, and Daniel Radcliffe responded off the cuff and surprised Jason Isaacs with his improv skills. Again, we see the wholesome benefit of partnering these young, impressionable actors with just British actors who are professionals and masters at their craft. Harry tricks Lucius into freeing Dobby, and Lucius is pissed.
You lost me, my servant!
What? That is so dumb, though. I mean, this moment kind of pisses me off now because I'm like, Lucius Malfoy tried to use the killing curse in Hogwarts. He would get arrested. His family would probably be arrested. He would have destroyed his life. Like, just because he lost him a servant? Come on.
Haha, he said Ava, which is gonna be Avada Kedavra. Thank God elves have very powerful magic of their own, and it doesn't require wands, but since they're usually relegated to being slaves and servants, they don't have to use this type of magic much. But yeah, Lucius was about to use the highly illegal Avada Kedavra killing curse on a 12-year-old student in a school. Now, this is new for the film. In the book, it just says that Lucius Malfoy lunges at Harry, and in the script, it apparently just said that Lucius tried to curse Harry, but Jason Isaacs opened Goblet of Fire and picked a spell to say, and it just happened to be that one. And yeah, it is pretty insane that he was so chill about child murder, especially with Dumbledore like 50 feet away in his office.
Seriously?
Harry asks Dobby to promise him not to try to save his life again. Dobby gives him a little smile, and in hindsight, this moment is bittersweet, given that Dobby actually does die after he saves Harry's life in Deathly Hallows. Dobby hangs onto and cherishes Harry's sock that freed him for the rest of his life. Off screen, the mandrakes get chopped up and stewed and given to everyone petrified to revive them.
It's finally me and you and me, just us and your friend Steve. Steve.
Hagrid gets released from Azkaban, albeit a bit late since Ron sent Errol to deliver the papers for his release. Couldn't you have used any other owl? So the film ends with Hagrid returning to Hogwarts' Great Hall after being released from Azkaban, a kind of ho-hum ending that made the best out of a pretty uneventful ending from the text, where the kids find out from Ginny that Percy was dating Penelope Clearwater, and Harry giving Ron and Hermione the Dursleys' phone number to call him over the summer. But I think we should end here by addressing this quote from Dumbledore when Harry frets about his similarities to Voldemort.
It is not our abilities that show what we truly are. It is our choices.
Remember, all of it.
Tempur-Pedic designed the Ergo Smart Base to help you fall asleep more easily.
Ollivander told Harry that the phoenix tail feather that becomes the core of his wand really connected him to the phoenix tail feather from Voldemort's wand, that they both came from Fox, which Ollivander said would make Harry capable of great things. Terrible, yes, but great. Harry could have become the heir of Slytherin and outpaced Voldemort's ghost to become the most powerful wizard. While yes, Tom Riddle did come from the Slytherin bloodline, Harry came from an important bloodline of his own. Tom Riddle / Voldemort himself was not pure blood. But ultimately, ability and talent do not matter. Fame isn't everything. Choices matter. Harry asked the Sorting Hat to put him on a different life path, and that choice meant everything. It transformed him from the boy who merely lived to the boy who bravely loved. Now, this film actually has a post-credit scene. It's the only film throughout the Harry Potter films to have one, where we see Lockhart's latest book titled Who Am I? Seen in the display for Flourish and Blotts. Now, he is in a straitjacket in this photo, still very much confused. In the Order of the Phoenix book, Harry, Ron, and Hermione run into him at St. Mungo's home for magical maladies and injuries. He still has no memories, but he enjoys signing autographs and decorates his hospital bed with photos of himself, so his personality is still intact somewhat. And yes, St. Mungo's, of course, the facility where Neville Longbottom's parents live after they were tortured to the point of insanity. Now, I have to ask, does Lockhart need to be in a straitjacket?
No.
Perhaps. He did assault a number of witches and wizards and was willing here to hurt children, but considering this is on the book cover, I wonder if this straitjacket was kind of a performative photo shoot by Lockhart to sell more books. Like, despite having his memory wiped, there's still some vanity in his nature to tell his story, to connect with readers. It just goes to show that even when public personalities lose their minds, they cannot help but keep on blabbing to the public. Okay, now let's go over some stuff in the upcoming Harry Potter TV series on HBO that they are required to include in the second season, Chamber of Secrets, to improve upon what the film built. Because we must acknowledge that of all 8 films, Chamber of Secrets tends to rank among the lowest. So onward to our room of requirement. Season 2 of the Harry Potter series. Like the movie, I think it'd be very cool if this TV series uses a mix of practical and digital effects. The practical effects and animatronics were always charming, and an over-reliance on purely digital effects just won't hit the same way that these early films did. Next, they're required to include the denoming sequence at the Burrow. That's a deal breaker. It's so good. They need to put it in there. Next, they need to cast an actual teenager as Myrtle, so it would be just less weird when she later has a huge crush on Harry. Just shoot the season 4 bathroom scenes when you shoot the season 2 scenes with her. All right, next requirement, cast a good young Tom Riddle. This movie did a great job casting a charming kid to play young Voldemort, Tom Riddle. It's very important. We got to understand why he was able to manage to amass so many followers before turning into like an evil, noseless freak. Also, we need to bring back Ghost History of Magic Professor Binns. He was such a unique and weird character from the book, and I just want to see the Ghost teaching kids about Muggle uprisings and junk. Also, the Headless Hunt. We got to just have more Ghost drama all around. And final requirement, I would love to see every season of the show use the kind of visual motifs that Alfonso Cuarón would use time for in the 3rd Harry Potter film for each season. Like, let's use the theme of blood and snakes and just like fluid to be kind of the visual motif of the 2nd season. We should understand how creepy it is to be obsessed with bloodlines, that there is some kind of like serpentine snake-like quality that no wizard in their right mind would ever embrace willingly. Okay, next week in our rewatch series will be Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. In my opinion, the best film of the series, directed by the amazing Alfonso Cuarón. A huge thanks to Gina.
Yeah, I'm going to explain my history with Prisoner of Azkaban. I can never understand why people think it's the best movie. It's really not. But then again, you're going to disagree with my next favorite movie. So, yeah, I don't understand why people keep saying that Chamber of Secret is like one of the lowest or one of the worst. It's bullshit. It's bullshit. I love that movie. If anything, it was better than the first one. So, I really enjoy that movie. But anyway, let me know your opinions below. Let me know what your favorite Harry Potter movies are. I'd love to hear everything you got to say. So please, smash that like button if you want to see more sexy and nerdy content, and subscribe if you think I deserve it. And remember, sign up for my Patreon for all my latest reactions to all my latest videos. And I'll see you on the next episode.